Under the pale moon of Sehwan, a group of gravediggers uncover something that was never meant to see daylight again. A rusted box buried beneath a shattered tomb. A name carved in stone. Sultan Zahid Khan, 1712. From that moment, strange things begin to stir. Whispers rise from the sand, shadows move among the graves, and an ancient curse awakens. One that has waited 3 centuries for a single mistake. Tonight, we open the Earth's oldest secret, the secret beneath the broken grave. A story of faith, greed, and redemption, where every shovel of dirt brings the living closer to the dead. The night was unusually quiet in the old graveyard of Sehwan, a small town resting under the pale glow of the moon. The graves stood unevenly, some cracked and leaning, as if time itself had tried to bury their stories. From afar, the call of a distant muezzin echoed faintly, carried by the desert wind that brushed over the crumbling tombstones. A group of laborers worked under dim lantern light near the edge of the graveyard wall. Their task was to clear an area where the old graves had collapsed after the recent monsoon rains. Among them was Karim, a 30-year-old gravedigger whose hands were hardened by years of digging into the earth. He swung his shovel rhythmically, the sound of metal striking soil breaking the eerie silence. "Careful there," warned Bashir, the supervisor. "Some of these graves date back to the Mughal times. Don't disturb the markers." Karim nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. But as his shovel dug deeper, it hit something solid, something that didn't sound like stone or bone. A dull thud echoed. He crouched, brushing away the soil with trembling hands until the outline of a small iron-bound box appeared beneath the loose dirt. "What's that?" Bashir asked, leaning in with the lantern. The flickering light revealed engravings on the box, strange, intricate symbols unlike anything Karim had seen before. "It's old," Karim whispered. "Very old." Just beside the box lay a flat stone slab. Karim cleared it gently, revealing a name carved in weathered Urdu script. Sultan Zahid Khan, 1712. The letters shimmered faintly under the lantern's flame, as though resisting time itself. A chill swept through the group. Bashir stepped back, muttering, "We shouldn't touch that. The graves of the old saints aren't for us to disturb." But curiosity overpowered fear. Karim ran his fingers over the carved name again, feeling the faint indentation of each letter. The air seemed to grow heavier, colder. "Maybe it's just an old offering box," one of the laborers suggested nervously. "People used to bury valuables with nobles, right?" Karim hesitated. "If that's true," he said quietly, "then we just found something that doesn't want to be found." The lantern flickered violently, its flame twisting in the wind, and for a fleeting second, Karim thought he saw a shadow move across the gravestones, tall and human-like, watching them from the darkness. "Let's get out of here," one man whispered, but Karim didn't move. His eyes were fixed on the box, half buried, half revealed, waiting, almost calling to him. He took a deep breath and said, "No, we dig it out." And as his shovel went back into the earth, the wind began to howl through the graveyard, carrying with it a faint whisper, like a name rising from the dust of the dead. The next morning, the sun rose over Sehwan with a hazy orange glow, spreading across the dusty horizon. The graveyard looked different under daylight, less terrifying yet still steeped in mystery. Karim walked back with hesitant steps, his mind restless from a sleepless night. The image of that iron-bound box had burned itself into his memory. He could still hear the faint whisper that had followed the wind last night, a voice that seemed to murmur his name. When he reached the site, he found the others already there. Bashir stood beside the shallow pit, his face grim. "I told them what we found," he said quietly. "The mosque's caretaker wants us to rebury the area. He says disturbing old graves brings bad luck." Karim looked down at the box, still half covered in dirt. "You didn't open it." "No, and we shouldn't," Bashir replied firmly. "The name on that stone, Sultan Zahid Khan, do you know who he was? He ruled these lands 300 years ago. Some say he was a saint. Others call him a tyrant who hid stolen treasures before his death. Either way, it's not for us," but Karim wasn't listening. He crouched, brushing away the last bit of dust. The box was small, about the size of a prayer chest, its metal edges rusted but intact. Around the lock was a faint engraving, a crescent moon above a sword, the symbol of the old Sind rulers. "Maybe there's something inside that tells his story," Karim murmured. "We can give it to the museum," Or at least the Imam. Before Bashir could stop him, Karim pried at the latch with his shovel handle. The lock cracked with a brittle sound. The moment it did, a gust of cold air shot upward from the box, scattering the loose sand around them. The lantern flame from last night's stand left nearby flickered back to life for a second, so without fire. Everyone froze. Karim's hands trembled as he slowly lifted the lid. Inside lay a folded piece of thick parchment, wrapped in faded silk, and beside it a small stone amulet carved with the same crescent and sword symbol. The parchment was brittle, covered in lines of dark ink that had barely faded despite the centuries. But what made Karim's heart pound faster was the script. It wasn't Arabic. It looked older, stranger. "What does it say?" Bashir whispered, his voice thin. Karim squinted. "It's a map, or something like one." There were faint outlines of hills, rivers, and a single marked X beneath a curved mountain range. Below it, in old Urdu script, were the words, "Where the moon meets the soil, the guardian shall rise." One of the younger men muttered a prayer. "This isn't right. This belongs to the dead." But Karim was lost in thought. A map meant something buried, something hidden, treasure perhaps, the kind that could change a poor man's life forever. That evening, as the others left, Karim stayed behind, staring at the parchment beneath the flickering lantern. The graveyard was silent again, but he felt a presence, like someone watching him from between the headstones. He turned sharply, but there was only the swaying shadow of an old neem tree. He gathered the box, the amulet, and the parchment, wrapped them carefully in his shawl, and began to walk home. The road to his small mud house wound past the edge of the old Sufi shrine. As he passed it, the shrine's caretaker, Baba Najib, an elderly man with a white beard, called out, "Karim, what are you carrying?" "Just my tools," Karim lied, clutching the bundle tighter. The old man's eyes lingered on him for a long moment. "You went digging too close to the Sultan's grave, didn't you?" His voice was grave, almost a whisper. "Whatever you found, bury it again before the next moon rises," Karim frowned. "Why?" "Because," Baba Najib said, lowering his gaze, "Sultan Zahid Khan was cursed by the dervishes he betrayed. His gold was never blessed. Those who seek it will lose what they love most before they find it." Karim tried to laugh it off, but his throat felt dry. "That's just stories, Baba. I only found an old box." The old man's eyes glinted in the fading light. "No box remains closed for 3 centuries, unless something inside keeps it that way." Karim walked away quickly, trying to shake off the unease. But as he neared his home, he heard something that made his blood run cold. A whisper in the wind, soft but clear, repeating the same words from the parchment. "Where the moon meets the soil." He stopped. The amulet in his pocket felt warm, too warm, as though it had a heartbeat of its own. That night, the moon rose full and white above the desert plain of Sehwan. The air was heavy with dust, and every sound, the cry of an owl, the rustle of dry leaves, seemed louder than usual. Karim sat alone on the floor of his small mud brick house, staring at the strange parchment spread before him. His wife Zainab slept in the next room, her soft breathing a faint rhythm in the silence. But Karim's thoughts were far away, tangled in the maze of symbols and ink marks that glowed faintly under the lantern light. He traced the lines with his fingertip again and again. The markings looked like a map of the old hills beyond the Indus River, the barren land where shepherds seldom went. He had seen that place as a boy, where the dunes met a row of jagged black rocks. Where the moon meets the soil, could it mean that place? He leaned back, rubbing his temples. "If it's treasure," he muttered, "why would it be hidden under a curse?" Yet the thought of gold, ancient coins, and the freedom it could buy kept clawing at his heart. He imagined rebuilding their collapsing house, buying land, giving Zainab a better life. Suddenly, a cold gust of wind swept through the room. The lantern flickered. Karim turned toward the door. It was closed. The next moment he heard a whisper, faint but distinct near his ear. "Do not break the pact." He jumped up, heart pounding. "Who's there?" The only reply was the creak of the rafters above. Trembling, he grabbed the amulet and held it up. It glimmered faintly, its carved crescent and sword pattern catching the light. But now something new appeared, an inscription along its edge that hadn't been visible before. He brought it closer to the lantern. In tiny Urdu script it read, "The one who opens must follow, or the guardian shall claim him." Karim's hand shook. He dropped the amulet, and it rolled across the floor, coming to rest against the leg of the table. He stared at it, feeling the air around him grow thick, pressing against his chest. Then, as suddenly as it had come, the coldness lifted. Zainab's voice broke the silence. "Karim?" she called sleepily from the other room. "Who are you talking to?" "No one," he said quickly. "Go back to sleep," but he couldn't sleep. Not after that. He folded the parchment and tucked it into the box again, along with the amulet. Then he pushed the box under the floor mat, covering it with an old rug. The next morning, Karim went to the local madrasa where old records were kept. There he met an elderly teacher named Maulana Tahir, who was known to collect manuscripts from ancient Sufi shrines. Karim showed him a rough sketch of the symbol he'd seen, the crescent above the sword. The old man adjusted his glasses, frowning. This is the emblem of the Zahid dynasty. They ruled parts of Sindh before the British came. Sultan Zahid Khan was known as a fierce warrior and a scholar, but he was accused of killing the very dervishes who blessed his rule. Karim listened closely. What about his treasure? Maulana Tahir's eyes narrowed. So that is why you came. He leaned closer. The treasure of Sultan Zahid Khan is a tale that has taken more lives than gold it promises. They say he hid it the night he was betrayed by his own men. When the soldiers came for him, he cursed the gold and swore no thief would ever keep it. The earth would swallow those who tried. Karim swallowed hard. Do you believe that? The old man smiled faintly. Belief does not matter, fear does. Tell me, Karim, did you see anything when you found this symbol? Karim hesitated. Maybe a shadow. The Maulana looked troubled. Then bury it again, son. The dead do not forget those who disturb them. But Karim's heart was no longer steady. Fear and desire fought within him like two wild beasts. That night he returned home, avoiding Zainab's eyes. He ate little, spoke less. When she asked what troubled him, he only said, work. After midnight, when the world was quiet, he crept outside with the box hidden under his shawl. The moon hung low, silver light spilling across the dunes. He walked for hours until he reached the barren ridge beyond the river, the place he'd remembered from the map. The soil there was pale, almost white under the moonlight. It looked as if the sky itself had fallen upon it. Where the moon meets the soil, he knelt and placed the box on the ground. The amulet trembled faintly in his hand. He pressed it against the earth. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a deep vibration rolled beneath him, soft but unmistakable. The ground shifted. The sand parted slightly, revealing an outline, a circle of stone hidden under the surface. In its center, a faint carving glowed, the same crescent and sword. Karim's breath caught. He brushed the sand away until his fingers touched cold metal. A ring-shaped handle buried deep. He hesitated, looking up at the silent sky. Then, as if drawn by something beyond reason, he grasped the handle and pulled. A hollow sound echoed through the ground, like a sigh released after centuries. The circle lifted, revealing a dark opening beneath. A stairway, narrow and steep, leading down into blackness. Karim held up his lantern. The air that rose from below was thick and cold, smelling of stone and forgotten time. He hesitated for only a moment, then began his descent. The steps were uneven, cut into the earth by ancient hands. His lantern cast trembling shadows on the walls, where old carvings lined the passage, symbols of swords, moons, and men in prayer. At the bottom he reached a small chamber. In its center stood a stone chest, larger than the one from the graveyard, its lid sealed with iron bands. Around it lay the skeletons of men long dead, soldiers perhaps, or thieves who had tried before him. Karim's breath came heavy. His eyes darted between the chest and the bones. So this is it, he whispered. The Sultan's treasure. He knelt, running his hand across the stone lid. The symbols shimmered faintly again, like breathing light. And then, from somewhere behind him, in the deep silence of the tomb, a voice spoke, low, echoing, ancient. Who disturbs the rest of Zahid Khan? Karim froze. The lantern flickered violently. The air turned icy, and as he turned slowly toward the sound, he saw it, half in light, half in shadow, a figure in armor, its eyes burning like fire in the dark. Karim stumbled backward, his breath caught in his throat. The figure before him seemed neither entirely human nor entirely ghost. Its shape was solid yet translucent at the edges, shimmering like smoke caught in firelight. The armor it wore gleamed faintly under the flickering lantern, though it looked ancient, cracked by time. A heavy sword hung from its belt, its blade etched with the same crescent and sword symbol as the amulet. For a long, unbearable moment, the chamber was filled with silence. The whispering wind from above had died completely. The only sound was Karim's heart hammering in his chest. "Who are you?" Karim stammered, though he already knew the answer. The apparition stepped forward, the ground beneath its feet echoing softly as if memory itself had weight. "I am Zahid Khan," it said, the voice deep and resonant, echoing like it came from the walls themselves. "And you have broken the seal of my covenant." Karim fell to his knees. "I didn't mean to. I swear upon Allah I didn't know. I found a box buried in your grave." The figure raised its hand and the air grew heavy. "The one who opens must follow." "You were warned." Karim's eyes widened. "You mean the amulet?" His trembling fingers reached for it, but it glowed in his pocket before he could touch it, as if alive. The Sultan's spirit looked at him, expression unreadable beneath the shadowed helm. "Many before you came seeking gold, none left as they came. Do you seek wealth, Karim, or truth?" Karim hesitated. I just wanted to help my family, to live better. "I am a poor man." The Sultan's voice softened slightly. "And how many poor men have turned graves into gateways for greed? Do you think gold brings peace to the heart?" His tone darkened again. "That gold was meant for the rebuilding of the shrine I betrayed. It is cursed because I died without repentance. Every coin carries the weight of my sin." Karim swallowed hard. "Then why leave a map? Why hide it?" Zahid Khan's eyes glowed brighter, a deep orange light burning like embers. "Because redemption lies where the seeker dares to see. What was stolen must be returned. The gold was never meant to rest in the hands of the living until the name of the betrayed is spoken again." Karim's voice trembled. "The betrayed?" The figure turned, pointing to the carvings on the chamber wall. Under the dust, faint names were etched, names of dervishes, saints, and disciples. "Find their resting place," the Sultan commanded. "Return the amulet to the first among them, and the curse will break. Fail, and your soul will guard this place as mine does." Before Karim could speak again, a violent gust of air surged through the chamber. The lantern's flame exploded outward, plunging everything into darkness. When his eyes adjusted, the apparition was gone. Only the sound of his own panicked breathing filled the tomb. He scrambled back up the stairway, clutching the amulet and nearly tripping in his haste. As he emerged into the moonlight, the earth around the opening began to tremble. The stone lid he had pulled aside started sliding back into place on its own, grinding against the ground, as though unseen hands pushed it. The soil rose, sealing the entrance once more until only smooth sand remained. Karim stumbled away, his clothes covered in dust and sweat. By the time he reached home, dawn was bleeding across the horizon. He collapsed near the door, gasping for breath. Zainab rushed out, her face pale with fear. "Karim, where were you?" "I thought—" She stopped when she saw his face. "What happened to you?" He couldn't answer at first. He simply pulled the amulet from his pocket and placed it on the table. The metal was scorching hot. Zainab jerked her hand back when she tried to touch it. "It's cursed," Karim whispered hoarsely. "We disturbed something that shouldn't have been touched." Zainab looked at him, trembling. "Then bury it again." "Forget it." But Karim shook his head. "It won't end until I return it. The Sultan's soul can't rest until his promise is kept." That day he went to Baba Najib, the shrine caretaker. The old man's eyes widened as Karim told him everything: the grave, the box, the spirit. When Karim showed him the amulet, the old man recoiled. "Ya Allah," Baba Najib breathed. "This belonged to Zahid Khan indeed. I have seen drawings of this in the old records of Sehwan's shrine. The dervishes he betrayed, 7 men of faith, are buried near the old ruins by the riverbank." Karim frowned. "Then that's where I must go." The old man nodded gravely. "If you truly wish to end this, go. But be warned, the guardian tests every soul that approaches. You must walk with a clean heart." Karim felt a chill at those words. That night, as he lay awake beside Zainab, he thought about the Sultan's words. What was stolen must be returned. He realized that the treasure wasn't the goal. It was the trial. Maybe Allah had chosen him, a simple grave digger, to right a wrong centuries old. Before dawn, he rose quietly, packed a lantern, a flask of water, and the amulet wrapped in cloth. He turned to Zainab, who was half awake, her eyes filled with worry. "If I don't return by tomorrow," he said softly, "pray for me." "Karim," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Don't go. You've done enough," he smiled faintly. "Sometimes peace is worth more than gold." Then he stepped out into the grey pre-dawn light, the wind cool and sharp against his face. The road stretched before him, toward the river, toward the ruins, and toward a destiny he no longer fully understood. Behind him, in the silent house, the amulet pulsed faintly beneath the cloth, its light breathing like a heart that had not stopped beating in 300 years. The journey to the riverbank took nearly half a day. Karim followed the dirt road leading out of Sehwan, past abandoned shrines and broken tombs, until the familiar call of the Indus River began to murmur in the distance. The land here was wild, dunes and thorny shrubs scattered across dry plains, where the wind carried both dust and stories of the dead. He stopped near the ruins of an old mosque, half swallowed by sand. Its dome had fallen, its arches cracked by centuries of sun and silence. Yet something about the place felt alive, as though time had simply paused, waiting for him to arrive. Karim wiped the sweat from his face and opened his satchel. The amulet inside pulsed faintly, giving off a low warmth. As he held it up, the same faint symbols that had once glowed in the tomb shimmered again. The crescent and sword reflected a strange light, not from the sun, but from within the metal itself. He remembered Baba Najib's warning. The 7 dervishes are buried near the ruins by the riverbank. Karim began searching among the scattered gravestones. Most were eroded, their inscriptions gone, but some still carried faint Urdu names. He moved slowly, brushing off dust and sand. Hours passed. Just as dusk began to fall, he found it, a line of 7 small graves, marked with simple stones arranged in a perfect crescent shape. The first stone bore a single word, Rahman. He knelt beside it, heart pounding. The Sultan had said, "Return the amulet to the first among them." That meant this grave. Karim pulled the amulet from his pouch, but as soon as he touched the ground with it, the air grew thick. The warm evening breeze turned cold. The birds fell silent. The sand beneath his knees began to tremble, as if something was stirring below. He stepped back instinctively. The soil cracked open slightly near the grave, and from the gap a faint light began to seep, pale, golden, like the glow of dawn trapped underground. Then a whisper rose, carried on the wind. "Do not fear, seeker. You have come as destined." Karim froze. The voice was soft but echoed all around him. The light spread across the line of graves, each one glowing faintly in turn, until the entire crescent shimmered beneath the twilight sky. Then, before his eyes, the sand between the graves began to shift, forming a narrow path leading toward the river. Karim clutched the amulet tighter and followed it, his steps cautious, his breath shallow. The path ended at a low mound near the river's edge, one that looked freshly disturbed, though no one had been here for centuries. In its center lay a round stone slab. The crescent and sword symbol was carved deeply into it, exactly as he had seen in the tomb. He knelt again, pressing the amulet into the symbol. At once a pulse of light shot outward, blinding him for a moment. When he opened his eyes, the slab had shifted aside, revealing a small hollow chamber beneath. Inside it lay a second chest. Not of stone this time, but of blackened wood bound with silver strips. Unlike the earlier one, this chest wasn't locked. Its lid lifted easily. Inside were 7 small gold coins, dull with age but clearly valuable, and beneath them a scroll wrapped in silk. Karim carefully unrolled it. The writing was old but still legible. "To the one who dares to redeem, return what was stolen, and peace shall be restored. Betray again, and the curse shall know no end." Beneath the writing, a seal bore Zahid Khan's name. Karim stared at the gold. So this was the treasure. Not chests of jewels or mountains of coins, but 7 pieces, one for each dervish he had wronged. His mind filled with questions. Should he take them to the shrine? Bury them here? Was this truly what would end the curse? Before he could decide, thunder rumbled across the horizon. The sky, clear moments ago, darkened rapidly. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain and something older, like the breath of the grave. He looked around. The graves no longer glowed. Instead, dark mist began to curl above them, swirling into shapes, faces, outlines of men in tattered robes. Karim stumbled backward, clutching the amulet to his chest. The apparitions spoke together, their voices layered like echoes of prayers. "You have found what was taken. Now restore it," Karim raised his hand. "Tell me how." "I don't understand. The gold was meant for Allah's house," they said. "Return it where faith once stood, and the chain shall break." He realized at once they meant the ruined mosque. Karim turned and ran toward it as rain began to fall, soft at first, then harder, soaking the sand and his clothes. Inside the broken mosque, he placed the 7 coins before the cracked mihrab, where the imam once led prayer. The moment the last coin touched the stone floor, the wind howled through the arches, the walls trembled, and the roof's shattered dome glowed faintly. Outside, lightning flashed across the sky. For a moment, the figures of the 7 dervishes appeared in the light, standing beside the graves, hands raised in dua. Behind them, the silhouette of Sultan Zahid Khan appeared once more, his armor gone, his face calm. He looked toward Karim, his voice carried by the storm. "It is done. The gold is returned. The curse ends with you." Then the figures faded into the rain one by one, until only the empty graves remained. Karim sank to his knees, drenched, shaking. The amulet in his hand had turned cold, its glow gone. When he looked at it again, the engraving of the crescent and sword had disappeared completely, leaving only a plain stone. By the time dawn broke, the storm had passed. The graves were silent again, the earth sealed as if untouched. Karim walked home through the wet fields, his mind numb, his heart strangely peaceful. When he reached his house, Zainab stood waiting at the doorway, tears in her eyes. "You came back," she whispered. He nodded, voice trembling. "It's over." That night, as they sat together under the soft glow of the lantern, Karim took out the amulet one last time. It no longer pulsed, no longer glimmered. He placed it on the windowsill, whispering a prayer for the Sultan and the 7 dervishes. Outside, the wind was quiet. The graveyard of Sehwan slept again, but deep beneath its soil, where the curse had once stirred, peace finally settled after 3 centuries, and as Karim closed his eyes, he thought he heard one last whisper carried on the wind, a voice not of warning, but of gratitude. "You have freed us, Seeker. Now let the living rest." Days passed, but the strange heaviness in Karim's heart would not leave. Though the storm had calmed and the sky of Sehwan had cleared, he could still feel the echo of those voices, the chill of the unseen wind that had whispered from centuries ago. Each night he dreamt of the graves, 7 glowing lights in the desert, the Sultan's burning eyes watching from beyond the veil of time. Zainab noticed the change first. He would wake suddenly, gasping, his hands shaking as though he were still holding the amulet. One night she whispered, "Karim, maybe you should see the Imam. You did something no one else has done. Sometimes peace needs prayer too." He nodded, though the truth was deeper than prayer alone. Inside him a question burned stronger every day. Why was I chosen? The next morning he went to the old mosque once more, the same ruins where he had placed the 7 coins. To his astonishment, it was no longer crumbling as before. The sand that had buried its steps was gone, the stones stood upright, and a faint fragrance of rosewater filled the air. It was as though the place had been reborn. At the center where he had left the gold, a single flower had grown overnight, a white desert lily blooming through the cracks of stone. Karim knelt beside it and whispered, "Ya Allah, is this your sign?" Behind him came a familiar voice. "It is a reminder." Karim turned. Baba Najib stood there leaning on his staff. The old man's eyes were filled with tears. This mosque was dead for generations. No one prayed here. No adhan echoed within these walls. And now look, Allah has restored what man had forgotten. Karim bowed his head. "I only did what I was told. I returned what was stolen." The caretaker smiled faintly. "No, son. You returned faith to where greed once stood." That evening, word spread through the nearby villages. People came to see the mosque that had come back to life. Some said they heard Quranic recitations at night. Others swore they saw light shimmering over the river. For the first time in decades, the sound of azan was heard from the ruins of the old shrine. But Karim stayed silent about his role. When asked, he only said, "Allah's will is enough of a story." Still, one night as he sat outside his house watching the stars reflected in the Indus, he heard the faintest echo again, a voice deep and calm, carried by the river's wind. "Peace be upon you, keeper of the oath." He looked up sharply. There was no one. Yet a warmth filled his chest, not fear but serenity. For the first time in his life, Karim felt truly free. However, destiny was not yet finished with him. A few weeks later, a group of men from Karachi arrived in Sehwan. They claimed to be historians and government officials, investigating reports of ancient relics and archaeological disturbances. They questioned villagers, examined the ruins, and eventually came to Karim's house. Their leader, a tall man in a beige coat, introduced himself as Dr. Shabir Hassan from the National Heritage Department. "We've received word," he said politely, "that you discovered something near the old graveyard, an artifact of significant value." "May we see it?" Karim hesitated. "If you mean the amulet, it's no longer with me," Dr. Shabir frowned. "No longer?" "I returned it," Karim said quietly. "To where it belonged." The official exchanged uncertain glances with his colleagues. "You're saying you buried it again?" "I didn't bury it," Karim corrected. "It was taken back." The man smiled awkwardly, clearly dismissing his words as superstition. "All right then. Still, if anything remains, any object, any coin, it should be handed to the state. These are protected heritage items." Karim looked him in the eye. "There is nothing left to give. The real treasure was never gold." After they left, Zainab sighed with relief, but Karim sensed the officials would return. He could already see the greed in their eyes, the same hunger that had once doomed the Sultan himself. That night he walked again to the graveyard. The moonlight painted the tombstones silver, and the wind carried the faint scent of jasmine. He knelt before the grave of Sultan Zahid Khan. The stone was no longer cracked. It had mended itself somehow, smooth and whole, the name glinting in the moonlight. Karim whispered, "I have done as you asked. But men will come again, seeking what should stay buried." The air around him stirred gently. Then a single word echoed from nowhere and everywhere at once. "Guard." Karim understood. From that day forward, he became known among the villagers as the caretaker of the old ruins. He tended the mosque, cleaned the graves, and guided travelers who came in curiosity or prayer. Those who met him spoke of his calm eyes, the light in his face, and the strange peace that seemed to follow wherever he went. Years passed. The town of Sehwan grew busier. Tourists came, traders set up shops, and even a small museum opened near the river. But whenever anyone tried to dig near the old graves, or disturb the soil of the Sultan's resting place, something uncanny would happen. Their tools would break, their lights would flicker, and sometimes, they claimed, a shadow in armor would appear, standing watch. Karim never denied the stories, nor did he confirm them. He simply smiled and said, "Some treasures guard themselves." One evening, many years later, as the sun set red over the Indus, Karim felt his heart growing weaker. He called Zainab to his side. "If I go tonight," he whispered, "bury me near the mosque. Let me keep watch." Tears streamed down her face. "Don't say that," but he smiled gently. "Peace is a better journey than fear." That night, as he lay beneath the stars, the wind rose softly, not cold but warm like a blessing, and those who lived nearby swore that, for the briefest moment, they saw a faint golden glow rise from the old mosque and drift upward, like a soul finally freed. The next morning, Zainab found him gone, his face calm, his hands folded over his chest, the faintest trace of a smile on his lips, and so it was said that the man who had found the treasure of Zahid Khan became its final guardian, not of gold, but of faith, peace, and the forgotten promise of a time when men believed that what was buried in the earth could still hold the light of heaven. From then on, when the desert winds swept across Sehwan on moonlit nights, travelers claimed to hear two voices, one old, one new, praying together among the ruins, keeping the covenant alive for all eternity. Years turned into decades. The story of Karim, the humble gravedigger who found the cursed treasure of Sultan Zahid Khan, became part of Sehwan's living memory, half legend, half faith. Children whispered it by the fire. Travelers repeated it along the dusty roads, and the elders swore it was true because they had seen the mosque bloom again with their own eyes. The old graveyard no longer felt haunted. Wild jasmine grew where once only dust had settled, and the cracked tombs now stood upright, as if guarded by unseen hands. The people called it Kabaristan-i-Nur, the graveyard of light. In time, Karim's grave beside the mosque became a place of quiet pilgrimage. No marble headstone marked it, only a simple slab of stone with the words engraved in faint Urdu. He returned what was stolen, and peace returned to us. Zainab lived many more years watching the village transform. Roads were built, shops opened, and people began to forget the true weight of the story. But every evening as the sun set and the sky turned crimson, she would walk to the mosque, sit by Karim's grave, and recite a verse from the Quran for his soul. The wind would always answer, gentle, rhythmic, as though the whole graveyard breathed with her prayer. Then one year, a new kind of visitor arrived, a team of archaeologists and filmmakers from Karachi, eager to make a documentary about the lost treasure of Zahid Khan. Among them was a young woman named Dr. Mahira Khan, a historian with sharp eyes and a curious mind. She listened to the villagers' tales patiently, recording everything in her leather notebook. Yet her thoughts were not of curses or spirits. She was looking for proof, something tangible. "Every legend," she said softly to her assistant, "has a root in truth. We only need to find where it touches the earth." The villagers were hesitant. The elders warned her not to dig, not to disturb what had long been sealed. But curiosity, the same that had driven Karim once, stirred within her. "We'll just survey the area," she told them. Nothing more. That night, as the crew camped near the riverbank, a strange wind rose. It wasn't cold, but it carried whispers, as if hundreds of voices spoke together from far away. The cameraman laughed nervously. "Maybe your ghosts are welcoming us," but Mahira didn't laugh. She looked toward the ruins where faint light seemed to shimmer across the mosque's dome, even though no lamp burned there. The next morning they began their work. Using scanners and ground sensors, they mapped the soil beneath the graves. Everything appeared normal, except for one spot near Karim's own resting place. There the scanner showed a hollow chamber several feet deep. "Perhaps an unmarked crypt," said one of the technicians. Mahira's eyes gleamed, or something left behind. Ignoring the protests of the caretaker, they began digging carefully. The deeper they went, the stranger things became. The air grew colder, the soil damper, as though the earth itself resisted their intrusion. Then the shovel struck metal. A dull clang. Everyone froze. They cleared the dirt away and found a small chest, old, rusted and sealed with a faint imprint of a crescent above a sword. The same symbol again, the same one that had haunted the story for centuries. When Mahira brushed her fingers across it, the metal pulsed faintly with warmth. For a fleeting moment she thought she saw something, a shimmer, a shadow behind her shoulder. "Open it," whispered one of her colleagues, excitement trembling in his voice. But Mahira hesitated. Her heart pounded. "Maybe. We shouldn't." Before she could decide, the caretaker, a thin, grey-bearded man who claimed to be Karim's grandson, stepped forward. "Stop," he said firmly. "That chest is not meant for you." Mahira turned to him. "You don't understand. This could be history, the proof of everything your grandfather did." The old man's eyes burned with a strange calm. "He didn't do it for proof. He did it so we would never have to dig here again." The crew laughed quietly, dismissing his words. But as they lifted the chest, the wind rose suddenly, violently. The sand around them swirled into small spirals, and the sky darkened, though it was still morning. The chest slipped from their hands, falling open. Inside there was no gold, no scroll, only dust, and a single small stone amulet, cracked in half. Its engraving, the crescent and sword, glowed faintly for one heartbeat, then faded to ash. A voice soft and ancient seemed to echo from nowhere. "The one who follows must remember. The promise ends when greed begins." Mahira staggered back, her skin cold. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, but none of the crew answered. They were pale, frozen, staring toward the mosque. The dome, Basids once faintly golden, now shone brightly in the sunlight, though no reflection touched it. The caretaker bent down, gathering the ashes of the amulet into his palm. "You see," he murmured, "the earth gives warning before it closes again." He scattered the dust into the wind, reciting softly, "Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un." The dig ended that very day. The crew packed up silently. Mahira, shaken but changed, stayed behind one last evening. She went to the mosque, knelt beside Karim's grave and whispered, "Forgive me. I came for history, and I found faith." That night she dreamt of a man standing by the river, thin, weathered in a tattered shawl, Karim. In her dream, he smiled at her and said, "Truth isn't what you dig from the ground, child. It's what you bury in your heart." When she awoke, the dawn light filled her tent. The air was soft and warm, the desert alive with the sound of birds. The ruins stood silent, untouched again, as if the world had decided to forget the intrusion. Before leaving Sehwan, Mahira went to see Baba Karim's grandson one last time. She handed him her notebook, filled with every detail of her research. "Keep it," she said. "Some stories are better told by those who believe them." He smiled faintly. "And some stories don't need telling at all. They live even when words fade." As Mahira's jeep drove away, the caretaker looked toward the horizon where the river met the sun. For a moment he thought he saw two figures standing by the water, one in old armor, one in a simple cotton shawl. Both were watching the dawn rise over Sehwan. He smiled, whispering, "Still guarding, aren't you?" The wind answered softly, carrying a prayer across the land that had once known curse, and now knew peace. And thus, in the heart of Pakistan's dusty plains, beneath the soil of Sehwan, the story of the broken grave and the hidden box lived on, not as a tale of greed or gold, but as a timeless reminder that faith, once lost and found again, is the greatest treasure of all. Many years later, Sehwan had become unrecognizable from the quiet village it once was. Paved roads stretched across its dusty outskirts, and the rhythmic hum of motorbikes replaced the cries of donkeys and carts. The old mosque near the riverbank had been rebuilt by the government into a modest shrine. Pilgrims came every year during spring, leaving garlands and candles near Karim's grave. Yet beneath all the noise and the bright paint, a strange silence still lived in the soil, a silence older than memory, deeper than stone. The caretaker of the shrine, Abdul Rahim, was a middle-aged man with calm eyes and a silver beard. He was the great-grandson of Karim. Every evening he swept the courtyard, cleaned the lamps, and sat beneath the neem tree that grew beside the mosque. People often came to him not just to pray but to talk, to unburden themselves, as though something about that place made confession easier. Sometimes travelers asked him about the treasure. He always smiled and replied, "If there ever was one, it is now buried in hearts, not earth." But deep inside, Rahim had questions of his own. From the time he was a child, he had seen strange things. Glimmers of light moving among the graves on moonlit nights, whispers that faded when he turned his head, and the soft fragrance of rosewater appearing from nowhere. He often wondered if it was all imagination, or if his bloodline was somehow bound to the mystery of the Sultan and his curse. One night, as the sky spread its endless quilt of stars, a sandstorm rolled in from the desert. The wind howled through the graves, tearing at the prayer flags and rattling the iron gate. Rahim hurried to secure the lamps, but the storm was fierce. Then, through the chaos of wind and sand, he heard it, a faint, rhythmic thump echoing from the earth near the back of the graveyard. When the storm calmed, he followed the sound's memory to a spot he had never noticed before, a small half-buried stone slab. It bore no inscription. Rahim knelt, brushing off the sand, and felt the same chill Karim once had, the air thick and heavy, as though the ground remembered. He whispered the name of Allah and gently pressed his palm against the stone. For a heartbeat, the earth seemed to pulse beneath his touch. Then, with a soft crack, a piece of the slab shifted. Beneath it was a cavity, no bigger than a prayer niche. Inside lay a small metal plate engraved with words in Old Urdu. "To the one who guards what cannot be seen, the covenant remains until truth is forgotten." Rahim stared at it for a long time. Then he covered the slab again, whispering, "May it never be forgotten." That night he couldn't sleep. The words echoed in his mind. What did truth mean in a world where stories had become entertainment? Where people came for photos, not prayer? The next day, a journalist from Karachi arrived, a young man named Farid Alam. He was researching haunted heritage sites for a digital documentary. With his camera and drone, he filmed the mosque, the graves, and even Rahim sweeping the courtyard. "Do you believe the story of Sultan Zahid Khan?" Farid asked, leaning forward with curiosity. Rahim smiled faintly. "Belief is not something I can hand you on film, Sahib. You must feel it in silence," Farid laughed. "Silence doesn't get views, Baba. People like fear, mystery, blood." Rahim's expression hardened. "Then perhaps that is what keeps the curse alive, the hunger to turn faith into spectacle." But Farid didn't stop. That night, he wandered back into the graveyard with his flashlight and camera. The wind was still, the air cool, the moon full. He filmed the graves, narrating in a low voice, "This is the so-called graveyard of light. Locals say a treasure lies buried beneath, guarded by spirits." Before he could finish, his flashlight flickered. The air turned cold. A shadow passed across the lens, tall and human-like. He spun around, no one. But from the distance came the slow sound of footsteps, measured, metallic, echoing off the stones. "Who's there?" he called. The footsteps stopped. Then a deep voice, calm and commanding, spoke. "You seek what was sealed by faith. Go before you open what should rest." Farid dropped his camera and ran. When he returned in daylight, the camera was gone. Only his footprints remained in the sand. Later that day, Rahim found the camera half buried near the mosque steps. He opened it carefully. The video was still there, but the last frame showed something no one could explain. A figure in ancient armor standing beside Karim's grave, eyes glowing faintly under the shadow of a broken dome. Rahim locked the footage away. "Some truths," he said quietly, "are meant to stay unseen." Weeks turned into months. The journalist's visit faded from local gossip. Yet strange things continued to happen. Pilgrims claimed that prayers made at Karim's grave were answered. A farmer who lost his child to the flood found him alive near the mosque steps the next morning unharmed. A widow swore she saw her late husband praying beside her one night before dawn. The shrine became known not for treasure, but for miracles. Then, one evening, as Rahim was closing the gates, he noticed a group of children playing near the graves. One of them, a little boy about 7, held a smooth round stone that glowed faintly in his palm. "Where did you find that?" Rahim asked softly. The boy pointed to the ground near the neem tree. "It was shining, so I picked it up. See, it's warm." Rahim took the stone. The crescent and sword engraving was faint but unmistakable. His hands trembled. It was the symbol of the amulet, the same mark that had haunted his great-grandfather. He smiled gently at the child. "You should return it where you found it." "Why?" the boy asked, eyes wide. Rahim looked toward the mosque. "Because not everything that shines is meant to be kept." That night, after the last visitor left, Rahim walked barefoot to the neem tree. He placed the stone back in the soil and whispered, "Forgive us if we forget." The wind rose softly, swirling around him like a prayer answered. He stood there a long time, watching the moon cast silver light over the graves, and for a brief moment, he thought he saw 2 figures standing in the distance, one in armor, one in a tattered shawl, just as his grandfather had described. They were watching over the land still. The next morning, the stone was gone. In its place bloomed a small white flower. From then on, every spring, that single flower appeared again, always in the same spot, always alone, as if to remind Sehwan that though the treasure of gold was gone, another treasure, eternal and unseen, still lived beneath its soil, the covenant of faith, redemption, and peace. And as the sun set over the Indus River, the people of Sehwan would sometimes hear, drifting with the evening wind, the faintest echo of a prayer from another time, not of fear, but of gratitude. Peace be upon those who guard the unseen, and those who remember when others forget. The seasons rolled across Sehwan like slow-moving waves, each year changing the face of the land, yet leaving its soul untouched. Decades after Abdul Rahim's passing, the Graveyard of Light had become a sacred landmark. People came from faraway cities, not for riches, not even for miracles, but for stillness, for the feeling that time stopped within those walls, that the air itself remembered prayers whispered centuries ago. By now the village had grown into a small town. Cell towers stood beside ancient minarets, and school children walked past centuries-old graves on their way to class. But even as the world outside turned modern, inside that sacred compound, everything remained as it had been since Karim's day. Humble, quiet, untouched by greed, yet not everyone saw it that way. In 2045, the government announced a plan to expand Sehwan's main road and build a luxury heritage park around the old graveyard. Investors from Karachi promised hotels, guided tours, and digital storytelling exhibits about the legend of the Sultan's treasure. Their posters showed shiny golden coins and the face of an armored king, the same Sultan Zahid Khan whom Karim had once freed from his curse. The villagers were divided. Some welcomed the idea of progress. It will bring jobs, tourists, money, they said. But others, especially the elders, grew anxious. That land is not for profit, one old imam warned. It breathes faith. You cannot sell faith. Among the people who opposed the project was Rahim's granddaughter Aisha Rahim, now a teacher at the local madrasa. She had inherited her ancestors' calm eyes and his habit of sitting beneath the neem tree with a book in hand. One evening, as bulldozers gathered near the edge of the graveyard to begin surveying, Aisha stood before the workers with a copy of her great-grandfather's old journal. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook slightly. "This land carries a promise," she said. "You cannot dig here. You cannot build here. The graves, you see, they guard something older than gold." The engineer in charge, a young man from Karachi named Naveed, smiled politely. "Sister, with respect, we are not touching the graves. The Heritage Department has approved this. We're simply documenting history." Aisha opened the journal and pointed to a yellowed page. "That's what they said 100 years ago. And those who forgot learned that history is not for digging, it's for remembering. But bureaucracy does not listen to faith." Within a week, the machines rolled in. The ground shook, and the old neem tree swayed violently in the wind. People gathered to watch, murmuring prayers. Then, as one of the machines began clearing the area near Karim's grave, its engine stalled. The operator tried again, nothing. The second bulldozer roared forward, but its front blade struck something solid just beneath the surface. A loud clang. The earth cracked open slightly, releasing a gush of cool air, and with it a deep, low sound, like a breath exhaled after centuries of silence. Dust rose into the sky, and for a brief moment everyone heard it. A voice, low and echoing, not of this world. "Do not disturb what was redeemed." The workers froze. Some crossed themselves, others dropped their tools. Naveed shouted for calm, but his voice trembled. Then one of the engineers ran toward the broken patch of earth, kneeling to look closer. "It's a chamber," he whispered. "Something's buried beneath." But before he could touch it, a sudden gust of wind knocked him backward. The sand around the chamber began to swirl violently, spinning like a whirlpool. The machines nearby flickered and shut down. Even the sky above dimmed, though the sun still hung overhead. Aisha stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "Stop," she cried. "You're awakening what my great-grandfather sealed." No one listened. Two workers jumped into the shallow pit and began to clear the soil with their hands. Then from within the darkness something glinted. A metal plate, the same size and shape as the one Abdul Rahim had once found. They pulled it free. This time, the engraving was new, fresh, as if the earth itself had written it that very moment. In bold Urdu script it read, "The covenant has been broken. Let remembrance return or silence shall fall again." The wind screamed through the trees. Aisha fell to her knees, clutching the plate. "Ya Allah," she whispered. "They warned us." That night, the entire town of Sehwan lost power. The lights went out, the machines stopped, and an unnatural stillness spread through the air. Some said they heard voices praying inside the old mosque, though its doors were locked. Others saw faint lights drifting over the graves, not like lanterns, but like stars moving through the mist. The next morning, when people returned to the site, they found something impossible. The broken ground had healed. The soil was smooth again. Every trace of the excavation, the tire marks, the pits, the metal toolsing, had vanished. And at the center of the courtyard where Karim's grave lay, stood a new neem sapling, small, green and fresh. Beneath it, someone had placed the metal plate from the day before, now blackened and cold. From that day forward, the government abandoned its project. No one dared to propose construction there again. As years passed, the story spread far and wide. Scholars, archaeologists and filmmakers came and went, but none could explain what had happened that night. Yet the villagers knew. They said the Sultan's spirit and Karim's soul had once more sealed their covenant, protecting the land that had forgiven them both. Aisha grew old, tending to the mosque, just as her ancestors had. She taught children beneath the new neem tree and often told them, "The real treasure of Sehwan is not gold or glory, it's obedience. It's peace." Every year on the night of the first full moon after spring, villagers gathered by the river. They lit small clay lamps and set them afloat, letting them drift with the current. The lamps shimmered across the dark water, like stars returning home. and those who stayed late swore that as the lamps floated past the graveyard, a faint melody rose with the wind, ancient and hauntingly beautiful, the echo of a prayer that had never truly ended. Where the moon meets the soil, the guardian shall rise. When greed returns, the earth shall remember. Under the pale light of the moon, the graves shimmered faintly, the neem leaves swaying as though bowing in prayer. And if one stood quietly enough, one could almost see it, two silhouettes standing side by side beyond the mist, Sultan Zahid Khan finally at peace, and Karim, the humble gravedigger, who had turned a curse into redemption. They watched the living from their world of silence, not as ghosts but as guardians of a promise that as long as men remembered faith before fortune, the land of Sehwan would remain under the protection of light. And somewhere beneath that soil, the amulet slept again, cracked, forgotten, and yet still pulsing faintly, like a heartbeat waiting for the world to forget once more.